Okay, here we go. So, welcome, Emily Thomas.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining. So, Emily, we're going to do an Ask the Expert session with Emily. Emily works for Cultivate What Matters, and she is a mom, a wife, a hardworking employee. She does all the things. And I just would love, I'm so excited that we get to talk to you about the work that you do day in and day out.
Here.
Yes. So I'm going to just get us started with like the really important things. Tell us a little bit about your family first.
Sure. Okay, so my husband John and I are high school sweethearts. We celebrated our 16th date anniversary in this month in January, and then we've been married for 8.5 years. And we have two kiddos. We have June, who is just turned 5, and I like to say she's a 5-year-old trapped in a 36-year-old body. And she's like just my little buddy. And then we have John Shepherd, who is 2.5, and in
Mhm.
like the best age of exploding with words. So it's very fun. And then I'm actually pregnant. So we are welcoming a new little one in July. So very excited about that too.
Love that. That's so exciting. That's so exciting. And after you get through that first trimester, I mean, which is just exhausting, then it's really exciting.
Yes, that has been the biggest. And I know everyone's like, oh, well, it's because you already have two kids. But the tiredness has just been like another level from my first two pregnancies, which
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sure has something to do with them, but also, each one
Sure.
is different. So, yeah. But feeling
Well,
good now that,
congratulations.
it's a little hard.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
super exciting.
you.
So family is good. And you are and I wrote this down because it's a long title. So you're the chief of staff and content lead at Cultivate What Matters. So tell us a little bit about your work, what you do at work.
Sure. So I have been at Cultivate and then before that Southern Weddings for over 11 years, which is kind of crazy. And I wear a lot of different hats there. Like you said, I have the chief of staff role, which we have a small team of 13 people now. And so that involves a lot of caring for them in both ways that are really fun. Like I was just putting together Valentine's Day packages for them this week, but also things like running payroll and, managing our 401k and just working on systems to help everything go smoothly for our team. And then as the content lead, I am writing a lot of days. So everything from blog posts to writing the actual new physical products, whether that's a write the word journal or power sheets or something like that,
Mhm.
shop listings, sales funnels, all the things. So I love it. I love that I get to do a little bit something different every day. That's kind of the blessing of a small team, and also just in my role doing a couple different things. So yeah, I love it.
That's great. So you have, and I know you do a personal blog on the side too. So you have so much going on. What like, and I was going to ask you to touch on your like typical day or your responsibilities, but it sounds like you really just kind of recapped that for us right there. Have you noticed any shifts in how you work due to the pandemic? Like this past year has been so different for so many people, and really a lot of pressure on moms too, or whatever the stay-at-home parent is, right? Sometimes that's dads too. But what kinds of shifts have you noticed for your personal life and your work life?
Yeah. So obviously, the biggest thing was that about a week after, okay, so back in March, we moved into our first commercial office space ever in the history of the company, literally 1 week before the NBA canceled their season last March. And so then we all transitioned to working from home full time, and we have pretty much been that way ever since. We have been back there for a couple things here and there, but mostly working from home, which our team is already half remote and half in person. So we were used to like had a lot of systems in place to help with that already, but obviously still a transition. So that has definitely been the biggest thing. I also before this worked 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. So I again already had a little bit of experience working from home, but definitely a transition. So there was that. And then again, last spring, mostly the biggest thing was having our kids home during the day. So my husband and I both work full time or almost full time. And our kids' preschool, usually they're in preschool, and that closed for, I think it was like 18 or 19 weeks. So we had some very wonderful high school babysitters that came in and helped us in the mornings, which was like a huge blessing and just a fun, like unexpected, thing to come out of this. And that kind of patched us through, but it was definitely a patch system, right? Like it was not the undivided, like work focused situation that I'm used to. And I talked about this, we might talk about this a little bit more, but
Mhm.
I have always been like, it does not work for me. I do not feel like my best employee or the best mom when I'm trying to split my attention. And so we've always, like, in our budget, prioritized childcare for the hours that I'm working. And that helps me be focused there and focused on the kids when I'm with them. And of course, all of that just kind of got blown up this spring and reminded me of some of the guardrails that we put in place that help us to be successful. And of course, like, so much grace for everything, just with
Right.
this unprecedented situation. But yeah, very grateful. In August, they started their new school year and went back to school in their normal schedule. So things have been smoother since then. But that for sure has just been was the biggest, upheaval last year, and just learning how to have more grace with myself and balancing, like, again, with, kind of being a person who has really strong boundaries, and those work really well for me and for our family, and having to bend on those in a lot of cases, whether that's, during the day I need to do something with the kids, and then flexing to do some work at night, and not feeling like, oh, am I like blowing up this whole system that I worked so hard, over the years to kind of put in place, but knowing like, no, this is an extraordinary circumstance. It's what we're doing right now. It's not, what we're doing forever. So yeah,
Yes.
that's a little bit about
Yes, that
that.
mindset does help to kind of
Yeah.
filter through. So, because we were in a similar situation at our house where my husband and I worked from home normally,
Yeah.
and then so the
Yep.
shift to work from home wasn't difficult, right? But having the kids there
Yes.
was
Right. Totally different.
is happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am not. I need a little dose of you in my life because I am not a person that like has lots of defined boundaries and, but I need them. So yeah, it was tough to have them there all the time, and then the homeschooling or the virtual schooling and different things for the different ages, and yeah,
Yes.
it
And
was.
very grateful that our kids are only, 5 and 2.5, and we're even younger last year. So I did feel very grateful that, like, I was responsible for keeping them alive and, like, generally happy and healthy, but like we weren't losing a lot of learning time. And I think that would have added just a whole nother level of, complication and stress to feel like we were keeping up with that. And so much compassion for everyone who was dealing with that. But yes, for
Yeah.
us, it was more like, okay, how can I keep you occupied for the next 2 hours,
What
while
holds
I'm
your
finishing
attention?
whatever.
Exactly. So how do you, I mean, with the kids at home or in preschool, either way, it's a lot to balance as a mom. And I hear you saying that boundaries have helped you to do that. But my question is, what helps you to balance? I assume boundaries is one of those things. Is there anything else that helps you to kind of get all of the things done that need? And I've heard such great things about the power sheets from friends of mine, and maybe that's a helpful tool too.
Yeah. So yeah, there are definitely a couple of things. I am someone who I'm an Enneagram 5. I know you got all are doing an Enneagram series soon. So I
Sure,
think
yeah.
I play into my strengths there, but I love systems. I love kind of thinking through what is the problem, how can we make it better. So a lot of that's like so much of what I just love to share on my personal blog too is like things that, I'm not like the most seasoned mom or the wisest person in the world, but there are things that I figured out that have worked for our family and for me. And so I believe that the things that we have should be given away freely, and so I love to do that when I can. But in terms of, kind of work in particular, one thing that has been probably the biggest thing that has helped me be the employee I want to be and the mom I want to be is my normal working hours are 9 to 4, and that changed when I had my first daughter.
Okay.
And that was just, I really felt that those slightly shortened hours, I worked 9 to 5 before that, would just give me that extra breathing room in the day to feel like, I wasn't kind of careening home and like running into the evening, but instead had a little more breathing room there. And actually, there, when she goes to kindergarten in the fall, they will change again to 9 to 3.
Okay.
And that's something that for years, I always, thought I would be a working mom and like wanted to do that. I have lots of passions that I love sharing in the marketplace, if you will. But I also, like, I grew up with actually two parents who were teachers. And so they had hours that they, were home when we were home from school mostly. And I just think that was like one of the biggest blessings in my life. And really like that was what I wanted to do for my family too. And I like hesitate in part to start there because I know that that's not everyone's situation and it might feel like far off, or like, oh, that's great that you can do that.
Right.
But I totally get that. But I also kind of do like starting there because again, I am a planner. And so when I, even from like a younger age before, ever had kids or anything, I kind of knew that that was my vision for the future. And so I tried to make intentional choices that would point me in that direction. And that is, you mentioned the power sheets, and I think that is kind of where those might intersect with that. Is that power sheets are all about helping you define a big picture vision for your future, and then take small steps to get there. And so, if I knew that in my future I wanted a family and I wanted to be able to balance being home with them with doing something I was passionate about, that I could start now to take steps to get there. And so some of those steps look like choosing to work for a small company where often there's more flexibility and, just ability to work with moms and things like that.
Mhm.
And then also staying at that company and really growing really deep roots instead of bouncing around. And so by the time I got to that place where, we were ready to start a family, I had built a lot of relationship equity there and, was in a position where I was able to ask for things that would really serve our family well. So, yeah, that's like, I know that's like a big picture thinker, but that I think is like just one of the most helpful things that has helped me kind of put those things in their place. And then
Yeah.
the other thing I would say is that we talked about this a little bit with like the childcare, but I definitely work hard to be all in wherever I am. So again, we've like made choices in our budget to prioritize childcare so that we can feel like really great about where our kids are during the day. They're in a Montessori preschool. We just adore it and know that they are getting something there that like would be much harder for us to give them, at home. And so I don't have to feel, like that guilt about being away from them, but instead can feel really good about like, what's being added to their day when they're there and things like that. And then on the work end, some really hard boundaries in place just around like turning off all notifications. I don't check email outside of hours. I log out of Instagram once I leave work for the day. And those kind of things help me to be really just fully present with my family. And um, of course, also in my responsibilities at work. So, yeah.
I love that. And it's such easy things to do, right? I'm not going to check emails outside. I'm going to log out of Instagram. It's easy things to do, but hard to do,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
and I think so often and of course, like every workplace is different, and I feel very lucky to work where I do. That's, very supportive of
Of course.
individuals and families and all of that. But I think so often I don't know where it comes from, whether it's just like culture or our own insecurities or whatever it might be, but this feeling of like, oh, well, no one's told me I need to check email at night, but like I'm going to do it because I don't want to miss something or whatever it might be or catch up. But like, unless someone is actually telling you like you need to be monitoring your email 24/7, first of all, you probably should like talk to them about that. Um, but unless that's like a specific thing, and of course, like there's seasons too, like, when we're launching our huge fall collection,
Yes.
there's different things flex and that's
The
totally
boundaries
fine. But like
expand a little bit.
on a
Right.
normal, yeah, basis, like so many times these messages that we think we're responding to are actually not even there. They're just this like message or pressure we've internalized. And so for
Mhm.
me, just trying to like think through, okay, so and is anyone actually asking me to do that? Or is it just something for some reason I feel like I need to do? And then if so, let's kind of get to the root of that if we
Yes.
can.
There's so much psychology there too, probably that plays into that.
Definitely.
Those are really good, small things that add up, right? The email checking and the where your child, like feeling comfortable where your child is during the day.
Right.
We love where our kids go, and I used to not love where our kids went,
Yeah. Yep.
and it does create this sense of like, oh, I should be with them right now.
Right. Yep.
And let me tell you, loving where they are right now in school and stuff, I'm like, they're having a blast.
Yeah. And
They don't need me
know
to
that
have
like
me
they're
there.
getting things they can't get from you. And that's great. And like that's like there's such wisdom in that, and knowing that you are not the only person that can add to your child's life and development and faith life or whatever it is, and instead like seeing what they're getting from those other things, whether it's time with a grandparent or at a school or, whatever it might be. But yeah,
And
that
so
takes
much
so
of
much pressure off us to provide everything
exactly.
for them.
Exactly. And so much of what we do at Restored is to form community for working moms, right? But
Yep,
our kids need that too. They need a community
absolutely.
that's supportive of them, and it comes from
Yep.
these different people in their lives. I love it. We're on the same page, my friend. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about. So Cultivate and Restored, very different companies, but and they serve different purposes, but they have a similar audience. I think Cultivate obviously is much bigger and serves a lot more people, but they have a similar audience, and it's probably predominantly female, and many of them moms, perhaps,
Yep.
and they we both want, I think we both want to serve women well, and we want to help them achieve the things that they find most important in life. And at Restored, and I think at Cultivate too, like we want to also point them. I know a lot of times we talk about, here's some things about work, here's some things about family, here's some things about, being a good wife, or whatever that shapes up to be. But like, don't forget what's at the center of all of those things. And that's like pointing people to Christ and all of those things. And I know I hear a lot of women with the different challenges across the board, that things that they struggle with, or things that they find challenging, particularly in this past year where it's, a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
What, in your role at Cultivate, what do you hear as like a challenge from your audience that you're serving?
Yeah. I love that question. And in my role at, with content, that's one of the biggest uh responsibilities of my job is listening to people, because then we can help create things around that, right? Whether it's a content piece, a blog post that might be addressing a particular pain point, or a whole new product that would come alongside them in a struggle that they're having. So we do a lot of listening, and try to respond as we can. Um, and then, the same thing kind of in, obviously, my personal blog has a much smaller audience, but it is a really neat chance to come alongside people in a way that's more intimate a lot of times than even it is at Cultivate, because the same people come back and comment on posts, and you just hear people moving through the same seasons over time, and it's an interesting window into people's lives too. But I think, I'm obviously always listening to like the working moms as well, being one of them. And I think one of the biggest struggles that I hear is, and we were just talking about this, but women who feel like guilt or sadness about being away from their children. And that often seems to lead to overcompensating with the time they do have together. And that could look like, packing in enriching activities after school, or just feeling the pressure to like make every experience shiny and exciting and memorable, and like mountaintop experiences with your kids. And so, but when we step back, I think we realize that that leads in most cases to everyone feeling exhausted and resentful and not filled up with what they need. And for a lot of people, I think the pandemic was this like realization of like, oh, we have been living one way. It hasn't been serving us maybe. And once we experience something else, even in the midst of all the hard, that does seem to be working better for our family. So I think that is one of the bright spots that's come out of it. But I would say in my experience, and again, it's just like one family, but I have found that, and again, my kids are young, they're 5 and 2, but what they crave most at this age is just time with me and my husband, doing very, very simple things like listening to them and reading to them, walking around our neighborhood, playing hide and seek, very into hide and seek right now, going on errands together. And like, I am all about, I love creating, I call it everyday magic, like fun experiences and things that bring novelty into our lives and connect us. But there's so many ways you could do that out of like the simplest things. Like, as parents, I think we look to things like the big trips, or, I don't know, like really fun adventures, things to get you out. But kids, like we are doing this for Valentine's Day. I got one of the Target $5 like mailboxes that are really cute
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're just doing, it's on our kitchen table, and I'm putting like some small thing in every day. Super simple. It's mostly just like repurposed toys or things that we already have in our house,
You
but they
forgot
like
to
love
add.
it, And so often it's like not money, or like it's just a little bit of attention and time, and it, yeah, that like, I think matters so much more. So yeah, that's something I've noticed and that I'm passionate about.
Yes, that is good stuff. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love the Target spot where you can get like the cheap toys and the kids love it. But
Oh
one
yeah.
one thing somebody told me one time, and this is not something I would have thought of myself because I'm really not that great of a mom, but like they were like, if your kid loves to do, name the thing, trucks, dinosaurs,
Yep.
princesses, whatever it is, like do the thing that they love with them. And that means the most. That means more than a trip to the beach or
Yep.
a big, outing to the zoo or whatever it is. It's whatever they love to do, like getting on the floor with them
Yep.
and just being in their world for 15 minutes.
Exactly. Well, and I love that you said that too, because sometimes we can look at that and be like, well, I don't have time to do like 2 hours, whatever. But like, it's not, I mean, sure, that's great. Like, if, you can do that, but that like focus time, like 15 or 20 minutes of that matters so much more than like 2 hours of like distracted time while you're also doing XYZ or, whatever. So yeah, I try to remember that for myself too.
Totally agree. And I think we've touched on, I had this question listed down here, but I feel like we've probably touched on this about like, maybe not, maybe you have something to add to this. How do you, with so much on your plate, how do you determine your own priorities? I know you're helping women all day, like achieve the goals that they've set for
Yeah.
themselves, but how do you determine what your priorities are so then you can chase after them?
Yeah. It's a great question. And this may sound like as a phrase, like a company girl answer. I mean, I have been at Cultivate for
Let's
over 11 years. So like it's a part of me now. But I mean, that is literally the whole point of Power Sheets, right? Is helping people develop a big picture vision for their life, which inherent in that is setting priorities. This is important. This is not important. There's
Mm,
literally pages in there that help you walk through that. And then month by month, as you go, through the year, you're making what we call the tending list, which is um, a one page in your power sheets that's meant to be sit open on your desk or your counter or wherever you want to have it, and that shows your priorities right there. And so for me, that has been so helpful to narrow it down to just like, yes, I have the big picture vision, but then I have a tool to help me look at just this month ahead, right? Because that
mm,
can get very overwhelming if you're like, oh, I have all these big goals and dreams or visions for my family or my life. But narrowing it down to like, okay, if this is where the goals I have for the year or where I want to be, what can I do this month to move forward on that? And for me, so many of the things that end up going on my power sheets are things that no one, it's not like paying bills, like it's not a to-do list.
mm,
They're things that like no one in my life would be pushing me to do except for me, right? They're things that matter to me, that I want to do, that would add value and joy and beauty to my life and my family's life, that move me toward the person I want to be. But no one's going to come up behind me and be like, hey, have you like made those photo albums from 2014? Like, no one's going to do that. Right. Like, but that's something that is valuable to me because I value memory keeping for my family and kind of like telling stories and things like that. And so, we all know things like that in the busyness of life can be very easily pushed to another month or another day. But by like putting it in writing, and also I write a monthly goals post on my blog every month, and that accountability has been so helpful.
mm.
Just to know that at the end of the month, I will be following up with, my readers, and I have very few months where I actually check everything off, but that's okay. Like it's not about progress, not perfection. I've done more than I would have otherwise if I had not set that goal. So for the how to determine the priorities, power sheets is a huge part of that. And then how to actually make them happen and make them a priority in my day-to-day life is just that breaking them down into smaller chunks and then giving myself that accountability. And for a lot of people, we have a very active Facebook group for Power Sheets users. And, obviously not everyone has kind of like a blog or a public space, but lots of people will post their tending list or post the goals they're working on that month in the group. And that right there is like great accountability and community. Just even if only a few people see it, knowing that you've put it out there, you've said you're going to work on it, and then, circling back around at the end of the month to kind of follow up on how you did.
I love that. So I have done, or I have a couple of the write the word journals.
Yeah.
I love those. But I have never done power sheets. I've heard good things, and it's always on my like, maybe I should check that out. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe I should check that out because it sounds really good. How would one go about? Is it just a purchase on the website?
Sure. Yeah, it is. You cultivatewhatmatters.com. They're only sold through our website right now. And we actually so we have a 1 year version that's, dated and has a monthly calendar as part of it and all of that. And those just sold out for 2021.
Great.
But we do have a 6 month undated version that's great because you can start at any time. And then, if you to fit the whole year, you can do two, or you can kind of work through that and then be ready to move into a 1 year next year if you'd like to. So that's a
Yeah.
great way to just start a little less intimidating, for someone who's new. So yeah,
Yes,
that's
maybe
very,
that's what I mean.
yeah,
I love, and I follow along on the things that you guys are doing with the business, and how you're encouraging and helping women throughout their life journey, right? And I love how no matter what season of the year it is, it's not just January. No matter the season, you're like, it's not too late to start. It's just
absolutely.
not.
Yep.
And I love that message that you're sending to
Yeah.
women and mamas everywhere. Well, is there anything else you would like to share? I want you to share what your personal blog is as well, so that people can know how to follow you.
Absolutely. It is called M for Marvelous, like EM, like my name.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it is, yeah, it's, you definitely, like, if you're a, follower of Cultivate, again, my like personal and professional life certainly merges in a lot of different ways. So I love to talk about intentional living like we do over at Cultivate, but I also am able to bring just a more personal lens. I love to talk about marriage and personal finance. It's a huge passion of mine. Parenting, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah,
Love
you
that.
can check it out, but yeah, it's great.
Oh, yes, we will
And
be
I've
following
also written that for over a decade, so there's lots to explore there as
along.
well.
You are committed to. I love how loyal you are. That's amazing.
That is an Enneagram 5 trait. I think I'm maybe a 6, a wing 6. So I've got that loyalty streak as well for sure.
That's awesome. I think I am a 9 with a hint of something else in there.
Okay.
But I will I will find out more at our February event, because we've got somebody coming to talk about that, as you
I
mentioned.
love
So
it.
this has been so great, Emily. Thank you so much for your insights and your wisdom, and the way that you're supporting working mamas like yourself through your work and your blog. And we just appreciate all that you're doing, and spending time with us today.
It was a joy. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. We'll talk with you soon. Thanks.
Okay. Sounds good.